Hey everybody, my top 3 games from 2013, starting with number 3, Rayman Legends. In terms of smiles per second, no game beat Rayman Legends this year for me. Just sheer, nostalgic, childish fun. Rayman Legends takes the cake for me. If you don't get a sense of what this game, if you haven't got a sense of what this game is, watch my Let's Play of it. That should speak for my opinion of the game in and of itself. But if you haven't checked it out, it's a 2D platformer from Ubisoft. And I love that a AAA designer like Ubisoft is taking a chance and spending any money at all because, they can get games like this published because of their name. They're taking a chance on 2D platformers, which just in this climate, they're greatly underappreciated. I mean, probably like 1 or 2 released a year from AAA developers, and if you take Nintendo out of the equation, even less than that. I think it's almost a twist on the formula of years past that my favorite 2D platformers of this generation are going to have. Nintendo's going to have nothing to do with them because you're looking at it right here. These 2 games, this game and its predecessor Rayman Origins, represent for me platforming nirvana, which hasn't been achieved by a 2D platformer in a long, long time. And this one just really took me back to my roots because I grew up on platformers. And if you are like me and you grew up on platformers, you got to check these games out because it's going to feel like a homecoming for you, just like it did for me. I mean, you want to talk level design? This game's got it in spades. Quirky, imaginative, and highly varied. It seems like the developers here never ran out of ways to change up the formula. They'll bring a new twist on the central mechanics that will just bring a smile to your face, and then they'll trash it and try something new a few levels later. It's just really exciting gameplay that keeps you wanting to, like, just one more level, and it draws you in. It's really, really fast-paced and supremely satisfying, some of the platforming segments here, in just a way that I don't think any other platformer game has managed to grasp this whole generation, actually. The graphics in this thing, out of this world. They're fun, they're just zany, they're my favorite visuals of the year, even taking into account all the chugging graphical juggernauts that came out this year, previously on this list and on this list yet to come. These still take the cake for my favorite visuals because they're just cartoonish and expressive and goofy, and always, once again, put that smile on that face. Smiles per second. Also, the music in this game, insanely good. Among my favorite soundtracks of the year. Rayman Origins also had a really, really stellar soundtrack, and the developers knocked it out of the park twice here. They lightning struck more than once, and actually they incorporated music into the experience with these music levels, which, again, if you want to check out, videos of them are all across the internet. I would recommend my LP of them. But the music levels, you're essentially platforming in sync with music, and it's a great marriage of music and game mechanics in a way I haven't seen since 2012 with sound shapes. Great fun, those levels. And it's not just more straight-up platforming. They packed a bunch of stuff in here. They got Back to Origins on here, which is sort of like a revamped with slightly better visuals versions of games from Rayman levels from Rayman Origins, which practically makes that game obsolete as far as I'm concerned. It's just like they take some of the best levels from that game and put them in here. There's also Kung Foot, a surprisingly deeply fun one-on-one sort of competitive soccer game where you're smashing this soccer ball back and forth and trying to get into each other's goal. Really, really fun. Plus daily and weekly challenges where you try to get as many lums as you can, or try to get to the end as fast as you can, or try to get the furthest in the level without dying, and you compete with everybody in the world, and then at the end of the day or at the end of the week, you win wonderful, wonderful in-game prizes. And so basically that means you can play this game forever. And you know what? I just might. I would call this the quintessential, even over Super Mario 3D World, the quintessential platforming experience of the year. If you are a fan of jumping on stuff, you gotta check out Rayman Legends if you haven't yet. It's really gonna fly under the radar in a year that had a lot of competitive titles. But this one, I was surprised how high it made it onto the list, but I loved this game so much. Rayman Legends, number 3. Okay, so for anyone who's been around on my channel for a while, it's going to be no surprise what the top two are. I did 2 videos about them, where I just call it Griff Talks About these games. They're The Last of Us and BioShock Infinite. It was no surprise that these are going to be the top 2. And, I think from a voice acting, characterization, and enemy design standpoint, even despite there are a bunch of cool enemies in BioShock, the clickers in Last of Us, I think from voice acting, characterization, enemy design, The Last of Us sort of has the upper hand. But I think from a music standpoint, the otherworldly setting, you just can't beat the setting of this game. I even think you'll find detractors of this game, they'll have a hard time arguing against how cool this setting is. And even I would think from a gameplay standpoint, even though I know a lot of people thought this game was generic with its gameplay, I think the BioShock takes the cake. And I think from a plot point, it's a wash. They both are very, very good. Let me just say, in years past, sometimes there's been a clear winner. 2009 with Uncharted 2, clear winner. 2011 with Skyrim, obvious winner. Last year I had a bit of a time deciding between sort of the game that shocked me to my core and then the game that healed me afterwards. That would be Mass Effect 3 and Fez. I eventually went with Fez, and that was a tough decision, but never have I had a decision this tough. Both of these games, I think, are going to be remembered as 2 of the better games of the entire generation, and it was incredibly difficult for me to pick my favorite. And so here's my decision. My number 2 game of the year is The Last of Us. I know this is the more popular choice for Game of the Year. If you want a more comprehensive take on why this game is great, you should check out my Griff Talks About The Last of Us video. There's no spoilers in it, but I'm not going to link to it. You can find it on my channel. But I think if you're really interested in this game, that's worth a look. I go more in depth about why it's so great. I think the key for this game's success for me is that it took a zombie apocalypse, essentially. Game staple that is tried and true. Everybody knows the zombie apocalypse. It's been done to death almost. But instead of making it this impersonal blood gore fest, smash fest, it focuses on the human characters and the human conflict. Humans versus humans, and humans versus themselves, and the nature of humanity. And I think carrying these themes are the 2 central characters, Joel and Ellie, which I think are the most fully realized, endearingly flawed, and shockingly human characters it's probably ever been my pleasure to play as in a game. I love their banter between each other. You understand their relationship, and they're the centerpiece for a plot of a game which just spins and just keeps going. It gains momentum and loses it. It feels very organic, and it's beautiful. It's sad. It's intense. It's even occasionally funny, which you need. But I just love the interaction between the characters here. I love the gameplay is very good. It's so raw and desperate. There are moments where you can't think of an easy way to get out of the situation, and eventually you'll start picking off enemies, and then you'll gain the upper hand, and then you can start taking advantage of that. And then as soon as you think you have an advantage, the game puts you in a situation where you're definitely the lowest rung on the ladder again. And it's just this great cycle of gameplay that sort of draws you into the experience. And I think the main theme of this game, if I had to choose one, is that raw, unfiltered, unpretty survival becomes a form of zombification. Just the absolutely brutal way that you attack enemies in this game, human enemies in this game, just because there's a conflict of interest, and obviously they're shooting at you. But it becomes so routine, and it happens so often that you almost become the first time I did a really brutal melee attack against a guy, took his face and smashed it against a counter, and it's like, holy crap, that was really, really depraved. But as you progress through the game, you become more and more dead to it, and I think the game's trying to say something with that. It's trying to tell you, look how glazed you've become towards this violence. Anyway, the game ramps up to an awesome conclusion that deals with questions of, player versus player-character dissonance, when a player-character wouldn't necessarily do the same thing you would. Or the game makes you do something that is maybe diametrically opposed to what you would do in that situation. And there's some really, really deep stuff there that they explore subtly and really makes you think a lot after the game is over. But I mean, The Last of Us is an incredible game. Naughty Dog probably is with this game takes the cake as the developers for the generation, and as like the best developer for the generation. Just knocked it out of the park like every single time they made a game. I mean, production values through the roof. Excellent voice acting, excellent graphics. The Last of Us is just an experience that you simply cannot deprive yourself of if you have a PS3. I mean, just check it out. But all of that being said, I just kept going back to BioShock Infinite as my number one game of the year. Frankly, I'm tired of talking about all of its flaws. It became... I mean, I've heard it all, right? I've heard it all. People say that the gameplay is super generic. I liked the gameplay. I felt like it was leavened. I loved using the sky hooks, and I loved opening tears, and I loved using vigors in tandem with guns. I felt like it never got old or felt heavy. I just enjoyed... I loved the flavor of the combat, even though a lot of people think it's just dolled up generic gunplay. A lot of people, I've heard that people, think the vigors don't play organically into the world of Columbia like the plasmids did in Rapture in the original BioShock. And, they probably have a point, but I can't bring myself to care because I have so much fun using the vigors. I know some people really were disappointed in the inclusion of Songbird, the sort of big, menacing, hulking beast that chases you throughout this game. A lot of people were looking forward to like the super epic boss fight, and it kind of never happens. But if you think about it, there are multiple points in the game where it chooses to deprive you of a boss battle that you would expect to have at that point. And I'm not sure how that works into the overarching theme of the game, but I think it does have something interesting to say. I think that the Songbird debacle is part of it. And a lot of people say, it's not as good as the trailers made it look. The trailers were so over-the-top, crazy, awesome, and then the game just wasn't that good. And, well, you probably have a point with that one. But, I don't know. I felt like for the first 2 weeks, it was nothing but praise for this game. Hyperbolic praise. People were like, the best freaking game I've ever played in my life. And then, there was a few videos popped up. They were like, this game's not as good as you think it is, or it's overrated. And I hate the overrated argument. And I get into a whole spiel about that, and you would be really bored and you'd shut the video off. But I'll spare you. But that sort of snowballed, and then all of a sudden it became really stylish to nitpick on this game, and it's unfortunate. It almost suffered from Christopher Nolan syndrome, where his movies, when they come out, everyone's like, "This is so great," and then there'll be a few naysayers, and then everybody else will sort of switch their opinion over. I don't know. I'm not bemoaning people's right to nitpick, but don't bemoan my right to love this game, and I love this game. I think it comes down to... I think Columbia is going to be the thing that maybe is going to be the thing I remember the most. I loved exploring this world. It was so imaginative. I've never been to a place like Columbia before or since. The city above the clouds, this beautiful, gorgeous city, but with some really dark undertones of racism and jingoism and classism, in a really, really exciting subversion of expectations. I don't know. And I think that this fully realized world is going to be the thing I remember the most. And I love that it's a basket in which is carried a brilliant narrative. There are so many themes. It would be cumbersome to list them all. But here's a few that just popped to my mind. How patriotism, when taken to its logical extreme, is really scary. How those in power are always the oppressors, despite whether or not their causes were originally just. Quantum physics, multiverse theory, and eventually the nature of game narratives themselves. So many there. And all these themes and this story is carried with Booker and Elizabeth. Elizabeth, sweet, sad, naive Elizabeth. I loved watching her interact with the world. I loved watching her grow as a character. I mean, this is the preeminent escort mission of all games ever, because she's such a help. You get so endeared to this character. They did an excellent job with Elizabeth. It also leads up to one of the most eye-opening, thought-provoking endings. Powerful, sad, beautiful, and I could do nothing but sit, mouth agape, and watch the credits. And what does this come down to? Why did this win my game of the year? It's because, like, after I played Last of Us, I feel like that game was great. That was an amazing experience. I wouldn't give it up for anything in the world. But I need to take a break. When I finished BioShock Infinite, the first thing I wanted to do, other than, post on blogs about it and look at Reddits about it, was play it again. I just wanted to get back into that world. Take even a deeper bite of all of the deep, all the deep symbolism, and find more things hidden in corners of the world. I just wanted to get in there again and get soaked up in it again. And I think that's what pushed this game to the #1 spot for me. That alone. This is the kind of game that I became a gamer in order to experience. Wildly fun, incredibly imaginative, deeply themed, and just a great game. That's it. That's BioShock Infinite. That's my game of the year, and those were my top 10 games of 2013. So what do you think? Are you totally happy that I picked those games? Are you totally mad? You want to rage like no other in the comments about how my opinions are so incredibly flawed? I would encourage you to do both. I would also encourage you to give me your top 10. I want to hear your favorite games of the year, because I love talking about games. 2013 was a great year for games, and 2014 is looking to be a good one too. A lot of cool indie games slated to come out this year. Plus, I mean, this is the first year that the PS4 and the Xbox One really get to bump heads. We're going to get Titanfall. We're going to get Destiny. We're going to get Watch Dogs. It's going to be a good year. You just mark my words, it's going to be a good year. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for sitting through all of that. That's a lot of talking you just heard me do. So, that's it. Next video, we'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time.